So what's the inspiration behind that single that you've got out that's Toxic? What's that
Yeah,
about?
so that was a song that I wrote back in 2018, and it draws a lot on mental health and the idea of being isolated in your own thoughts,
Yep.
and like the key line of the song is "When I'm alone, I'm toxic," and that
Yep.
really just like when you're alone by yourself, you can really get into your own thoughts and just get into yourself into a dark place that you kind of can't find a way out of. And it's like, how do you come up with so much? Like,
Yeah.
you have to stop at some point. You have to run out of ideas eventually.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to make this show.
Yeah,
because I want to know
like,
how people come up with their ideas.
Yeah,
Right? Because you're right. You can sometimes feel like my ideas are tapped out. Like, where do I get more ideas from? But if you have this fountain, you can just sort of draw from all the time. You're like, oh, I just go and tap into that and get them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
that's actually a really interesting point. There's a book that I have that kind of helped me draw so much inspiration when it comes to writing music. It's by a poet by the name of John Connick.
oh yeah.
It's a dictionary of obscure sorrows. So he's come up with his own words for obscure emotions.
Yeah.
So all these different words, they're branched off of all these different languages around the world, and words from different languages, but he's combined them to mean something.
Oh, that's really good.
And I would say for anyone that loves poetry or wants to look at the world a different way as well, definitely read it. It's sometimes I'll just read a word and its meaning and I'll go, wow, and I'll try and even if it's just a poem or some lyrics that I come up with that, then like that helps.
Yeah, because sometimes I think in a song writing, it's the meaning of the word's important, obviously, but it's also like how that word sounds when you sing it. And there's some words that are just like really strange, and you're like, I haven't heard this word sung in a song before. I need to use it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Good Vibes Show. It's Marie Hopkinson here, and I'm with Dylan today from Viper Chain, and representing his band.
Yep.
And he's also got a side project, a solo project that we're going to talk about.
Yep.
Welcome, Dylan.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we're going to be talking about music and the songwriting and the meaning behind music. That's what I like to talk about on this show. If you're listening on Spotify or YouTube or Apple, welcome to our podcast. And if you like this stuff, you can share the show with your friends, and you can also subscribe if you're on YouTube and hit that notification bell. That always helps us to supports the show and helps us to get found. And we'll get straight into it. So welcome so much. Thanks for sharing the time with us.
That's all right. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So let's talk about songwriting.
Yep.
And because you're quite a young person.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. And I saw you've got a Triple J Unearthed page for your vet band Viper Chain.
Yeah. So that stuff came out. Those are all demos that will eventually start coming off of our Triple J Unearthed stuff.
Okay.
Once we start like getting into the cycle of releasing new music, which is under works, but like we're kind of keeping it as much on the down low as possible. We don't want to reveal too much.
About the
this can stay in the no, like this can stay in the
okay.
podcast, but like we're not like saying too much about what's being released just yet.
Oh, so something's coming. That people should watch out for.
Yeah, so it's definitely a kind of a watch this space situation because we're not speaking too much on what we're doing just yet.
Okay, but you're doing something.
Yes, yeah, we are.
Well, we can't tell you what it is. We'll have to kill you. No, we won't be doing that. We'll come to your house and we'll find out exactly where you are.
Yeah, we'll remove your access from the internet or something like that. Like, I don't know.
That'd be funny, wouldn't it? If you listen to someone's song and then it like next thing you know, you get the call from the band. Hey, did you like it?
Yeah, hey, did you like that? Yeah.
Just doing some customer service.
Yeah. That'd be an interesting situation if you listen to a local artist and then every now like you listen to a new song and they're like, hey, did you like that one?
Yeah.
If they started doing it, I'd probably turn around and tell them that I didn't.
Yeah, it would be a bit strange. We don't have anyone's numbers and we don't have that technology.
I promise I won't do that.
Awesome. Yeah, but because you started music, obviously, in your band quite young, right? Were you guys in high school or uni together?
So I was actually they started in 2015. I joined officially last year. But I'd been in the band previously one time before as their bassist for a very short period of time, just because but then I left because it was clashing with an old project that I was doing which was a bit more of like a pop punk sort of like
Mhm.
band that I was doing back then. Because we went to different high schools, but we met each other through a youth service.
Oh yeah.
So we met each other at a youth centre in the city of Gosnells by the name of Sound Lab.
Oh nice.
And I made really good and close friends with these guys. They were the year below me, I think. And we jammed a couple times. I ended up originally joining the band as the bassist because they needed one. And then the current keyboard player, he was the bassist that took over for me.
Yep.
And then we've just, I would say, probably just over a week ago announced that we've added a new member who's
Awesome.
now taking over as our bass player.
Cool. So you guys can all fill in for each other.
Yeah,
if
yeah.
needed as well.
Well, all of us are quite musically talented. We can all fill in for each other at different sections. I think it would be easy if someone went, oh, I can't make it, but obviously we try and not let that happen.
You can't play two things at
Yeah,
once.
yeah, no.
Although you could make it guitar or something.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah, that's probably not your thing.
Yeah, no.
You might lose a lot of fats. Yeah, okay, cool. And it's because it's quite, like, I'm always interested to know how people keep the passion alive, to keep doing it, and motivated within a group, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's hard. People don't realize it is
Yeah,
hard,
no, it's
especially when you're
definitely
younger.
it's definitely difficult to get that motivation to, like, especially start writing something. I remember the very first rehearsal I ever had with the band. This was like probably 2 months before I was initially officially announced into the band, and we jammed for a couple of months before they decided to go, oh, everybody welcome Dylan. But we wrote a song on the very first day that I joined. Well, we wrote the instrumental to a song. I don't think that it ever really went further than that. We kind of were just jamming and wrote this like instrumental that turned into a song. I would say we tended to practice and just jam random ideas, and then they turn into mini songs of the day. And then we kind of we don't always branch off of that.
Mm-hmm.
We come up with so many different ideas that
That's cool. It's
hard to
like a
kind of
Sesame
pick
Street,
one.
the song of the
Like,
day.
yeah. So every now and then
But in
we'll
a
just
heavy
like
version.
someone will start jamming out this riff, and then like the bass player will jump on it. The drummer will find out what he feels like would work with that riff, and then you kind of go from there, and you build on the sections from there. I think we do that. It's kind of like become a bit of a practice tradition, because it makes it so much easier for us to like work with each other on stage, and especially with writing, because we all kind of know where everyone's going in those like moments when we're jamming random improvised ideas. We kind of know where everyone else is going for the next section, so we're able to like step off of what everyone else is doing and kind of branch off.
How long have you been playing together for?
So I've been with the band for over a year now.
How often do you practice, do you reckon, like, on average?
Every week.
Yeah.
So we have a rehearsal every Saturday. It's super easy because it's just at the lead guitarist and lead singer's house. So he is very accommodating to us and lets us use his house to rehearse. And it helps so much because then we don't have to pay for somewhere to go to rehearse at. And especially lugging around a drum kit, because we've just got an electric kit that we just plug in and rehearse with. So it's so much easier.
Yeah, people don't realise how arduous it can be. And,
no.
Like, your neighbours complain, and then next thing you know.
We did, I would say it was at the start of the year, we received our very first noise complaint.
With pride, I can see.
we thought it was quite funny because the city of Gosnells kind of knocked on the door and went, oh, here's a noise complaint. But then they kind of, like, we've done so many gigs and things for the city of Gosnells and done a lot with the city of Gosnells that they kind of went, it's all right, this is just a warning, like it's a brush off sort of situation.
Yep.
But it was quite funny because we were like, it was a public holiday. We were rehearsing during the times that you're technically allowed to make noise. I think it was Australia Day, and we were rehearsing for a gig.
Oh wow, that's mean. That's
Like,
un-Australian for someone to
I think they called in a noise complaint on the day that we were rehearsing on Australia Day. I mean, we do get a bit rowdy sometimes. Like, you know, it's like 4 or 5 guys in a room together,
Yeah.
making music. We're gonna get rowdy. Yeah. We're gonna, we're gonna swear. We're gonna say some things that people aren't always gonna want to hear, but like.
Yep. Oh, but that's part of the creative process, isn't it? Like, of being a band.
There's a lot of shit giving, I would say, in the band. We give each other, but as much as we give each other in the band, everyone takes it back because that's how we've made such good friends with each other. We like give some, you take some, like just it's always good banter, I would say.
Yeah. What advice would you give to people that are like wanting to start a band and they're having the various hurdles people have? Like, what's made you guys stick together, or what's made it work for you?
I would say find a genre or like a style that you really want to do, something that you've actually always enjoyed. Don't try and obviously you can try and branch out into the different styles that you like other than that, but find one that you really want to work on mainly and go from there, because I found with what I've done with my music, it's always easier to go with the one style that I've always liked more. And it's easier to kind of write music in that style or things like that, and it's always more motivating and more rewarding when you can start like creating music that you love in that style, because you've always loved that genre.
Yeah.
But I would always tell people, if they're thinking of getting into music or starting a band, like definitely do it. Like it's something that you'll love, it's something you'll learn from, because being in a band is something that's very challenging because you're working so closely with so many people, and everyone's going to butt heads. It's not going to be smooth sailing no matter what. There's always going to be arguments. There's always going to be problems. But it's finding the ways to deal with that that help in so many other areas of life.
Yeah, it teaches you a lot of stuff about dealing with people and dealing with your own emotions. And music can be very emotive as well, right? Especially when you're dealing with writing songs.
Yeah, I've been in multiple different bands. I think I've been in 5 bands since 13, so it's been 7 years.
Yeah, okay.
And I've been in 5 different bands. Yep. This is definitely the most solid one that I've been in, other than the one that I was in high school, but that had fluctuating members. Like people were in and out of the band all the time. I think I remember when we finished high school, it was just me and the drummer. There was no bassist. There was just a guitarist, a vocalist, and a drummer.
You're like, so guys,
we're a 2-piece.
What are we doing now?
We're a 2-piece, and we play pop punk music that kind of needs bass, and but yeah, I would say no matter what, you're gonna have problems with bands. You're gonna have bands that you didn't like, the bands that you didn't want to be in at the time. But looking back on it, there's some of the best memories I've ever made was just like performing at school, even, or like doing stuff like that.
Yeah, that's good. Because I think a lot of people don't know how to get started in it either, or they might feel, I don't know, it's got to be good but you have to practice a lot before you're going to be anything where you could perform, right? Like how long would you guys practice for before you did a gig?
Sometimes we get gigs last minute, and it's like 1 week. We're like, oh, we have to come up with a set list and rehearse it now, and otherwise. But there's been times where we've rehearsed for months. And
I mean, when you first start, like, let's say people are putting a band together, they'd be practicing for months and months.
Yeah. When I first joined the band, I was playing for 3 months, and we had and then we announced the band announced a gig that was for like the 13th or the 23rd of July or something last year, and then the 28th of June, I think it was, that they announced that I was in the band. So we were rehearsing for that gig with me in it, obviously, because we wanted to make sure that the music was tight, because adding a new member always can cause problems. But we were rehearsing for months before we felt like we were definitely ready. And then we had that first gig, and it was definitely one of the best ones, because it was my first gig in almost 2 years after I joined them.
Oh, cool.
So I hadn't done a gig since leaving high school. Like I was kind of still doing a lot of music, but not anything out for people to see. It was kind of just for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and let's talk about so your band's Fibre Chain, the main band.
Yeah.
Who writes the songs in the band?
So that's mainly Liam. He's the lead vocalist and lead guitarist. He comes up with a lot of the ideas, but there's been times where he's come up with pretty much the whole song. But now since adding the new bassist, he's kind of let Harry, who's the new bassist, kind of take a little bit of like reign in like creating bass riffs, because Harry's always been like, he's been a guitarist, but he always loves playing bass when it comes to that. Then Mark, our drummer, is probably the best drummer I've ever played with.
Cool.
And he has a knack of just finding what works for the song.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we give him pointers on like, oh, maybe there should be a fill here, or maybe you can like, use the dynamics to like bring that down a little bit in this section. But we always find a way to sort of.
Yeah. So everyone kind of contributes.
Yeah.
To the
So
song.
everyone contributes, but I would say Liam is the main like vocal songwriter in the group.
Yep. And do you come up with songs because you've got your own side?
Yeah. So
well?
I've written a couple of songs and a couple of ideas, but like as of right now, they're kind of just fleshed out ideas, which I'm still kind of working on before I bring them to the band. But things do like I struggle a lot from writer's block, and things come and go for me. Like, and every now and then I'll come up with a song, and I think it's great, and then 2 weeks later I'll like go back to it, and I'm like, nah, I'll trash it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty normal.
That's definitely normal, and it's definitely a process that everyone feels.
And I think it's probably good, because at least you're not thinking everything's great. That's not great.
Yeah, no.
That's also the problem. Could be worse.
Yeah, that's true.
You're like, why doesn't anyone like my songs?
No, it's definitely better when you can recognize that a song that you thought was going to be a good idea isn't actually like the best idea, or you can rework it to make it better. I feel like you always find room for improvement if you revisit it and don't just go, sweet, that's written, it's done.
Yeah, sometimes I get an idea that I'm going to write a song, like, or I want to write a song about something, because for me it's more like the idea of the meaning of the song. And then like I had this one the other day, and it's something that I've wanted to write the song on for like a year or a year and a half, right? Just this idea. And something that I do with my social media is I sometimes send, in my email, to my email people, I send them something that I don't send to everybody else, and I'll be like, oh, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of that? And they don't know this yet. But, so it was basically like an acoustic folky sort of song. And then I was in the studio this week, and we made it into a dance song.
Okay,
completely different. Like, and
that happens all the time.
And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to take this same idea and I'll make a different vocal line, and it'll just be different. And then it was like, then it became a dance banger.
I remember the very first song I ever wrote, and it's a song that I still do like hold very special to my heart. Like I use that, and it's always one that I'll probably re-release, but it's not released at the moment. It's a song called Breathe. I wrote that a long time ago. That was the very first song I wrote. I think in 2018 was when I first wrote my first song. And it was an acoustic song, just guitar and voice, and then it eventually grew into this like punk sort of song when I started playing it with my band. And like I've never played it with Viper Chain, but the band before that, we like kind of turned it into this like punky sort of song. So a lot of songs I wrote when they first were written were very acoustic, like laid down songs, and then they kind of develop into bigger sounds.
Yeah, and I think that's part of like learning. It's almost like learning who you are and learning how to be a songwriter is different to learning how to be a musician.
Definitely.
And I used to think that because I wrote the song that way, that's how it's always going to be. Like, I don't know why.
I do think that. Yeah, I do think some people fall into that trap. Is they'll write a song and go, no, that's all that it can be. I can't touch that anymore. Songs are ever changing, in my opinion, and that's why I don't hate the idea of covers, because like covers, you're doing it in your own style. You're doing their song and putting respect on their song, but in your own way. I love covers, but I probably wouldn't release them as much as like some other people do. But I think it's still a great way to show where your roots come from, like who you've always looked up to, and like kind of portray that in your own style.
I saw on your Spotify that you are influenced by Passenger.
Yes.
That's
So,
one of my favourite bands
yeah.
as well.
So
And that wasn't expected. Like when I listened to you, I was like, oh, Passenger. I didn't
yeah.
expect.
So
Yeah.
I originally had my first album out on Spotify, which the song that is out on Spotify at the moment was on that album, but in a different style. So that eventually, what's out now, like became that after it being just a soft
Okay.
acoustic song, but it's still soft. But it's got a bit more of a full sound because it's played with a bit more of a like a reverby sort of delayed sort of guitar.
What's that one for people that want to know?
So it was Toxic.
That's right.
Was the song. So if you're looking
that's
for
under
it
Dylan
on
Christian.
yeah,
right?
Dylan Christian with a K. That name stems from because Christian's my middle name.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh well, it was always like, oh, if I ever become famous, I don't want to use my full name, like so I'll just use Dylan Christian. So it kind of just became that, and my solo project has always been that ever since.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, nice. So, what's your favorite Passenger song?
It would have to be either Underwater Bride or Whispers, because Whispers was the one that I did a cover of on that first album. It was one of the tracks on that album, and then I've always loved that. And yeah, that album,
the Whispers album, is really good.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites.
Yeah, you could just play that over and over. Like every song is a little story.
Yeah,
right? It's like a little journey, a little story, and
I think what the first song on the album's like "Coins in a Fountain" or something like that. That one's one of my favorites. Just like the way that he tells a story is amazing.
Yeah, and the fact that he can write so many songs, like continuously, like there's just more and more and more.
Yeah, no, he doesn't stop, and it's crazy. I really do want to know kind of where he gets all these ideas for these stories that he's singing about, like, because there has to be a level, like, in my opinion, it's like, how do you come up with so much? Like, you have to stop at some point. You have to run out of ideas eventually.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to make this show.
Yeah,
because I want to know how people come up with their ideas.
Yeah,
right. Because you're right. You can sometimes feel like my ideas are tapped out. Like, where do I get more ideas from? But if you have this fountain, you can just sort of draw from all the time. You're like, oh, I just go and tap into that and get them. Yeah. Like sometimes ideas come to me from listening to a podcast quite often, like listening to someone else's conversation.
Yeah.
A word that they've said or a line, and you think, oh, that's a great idea. Like, or like sometimes people are talking about a concept, and you're like, oh, I could write a song about that concept.
Yeah. So, that's actually a really interesting point. There's a book that I have that kind of helped me draw so much inspiration when it comes to writing music. It's by a poet by the name of John Connick.
Oh yeah.
It's a dictionary of obscure sorrows. So he's come up with his own words for obscure emotions.
Yeah.
So all these different words, they're branched off of all these different languages around the world, and words from different languages, but he's combined them to mean something.
Oh, that's really good.
And I would say for anyone that loves poetry or wants to look at the world a different way as well, definitely read it. It's I think I got mine for like $30 from like Dimmix or something. So it's definitely one of those books that I always look into, and sometimes I'll just read a word and its meaning, and I'll go, wow, and I'll try and even if it's just a poem or some lyrics that I come up with that, then like that helps.
Yeah, because sometimes I think in the songwriting, it's the meaning of the word's important, obviously, but it's also like how that word sounds when you sing it. And there's some words that are just like really strange, and you're like, I haven't heard this word sung in a song before. I need to use it. Like it's got a really weird way of, or it's got a weird rhyme that you haven't heard before.
Yeah, definitely.
Like there's something weird about that, isn't it? It's like you want to hear. It's like, when you hear a song, you want to play it on repeat all the time because you want to hear that thing again.
Yes, yeah,
like the articulation of that. Yeah, that's a great idea to get the inspiration. I'll be checking that book out.
Yeah, that was that. I would say I only bought it this year, but because I found this guy on TikTok who was like he was doing this series called Beautiful Words to describe obscure emotions.
Yeah,
and it was all words from this book. So I decided, like, I need to get this book. Like, these words are like odd, but they mean such
Yep.
like beautiful and obscure emotions that like I felt at one point in my time in my life. And one of my favorite ones was the word Sonder,
Yeah.
which is the realization that everybody that you pass by has a completely different life to yours and is serving their own life purpose. Like, everyone, you don't realize it most of the time, but that realization that everyone's different and they're all serving their own life at a different rate to you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think sometimes we don't realize how limiting just having one language is. Actually.
Yeah, and I think that's really awesome because they're words that you don't see. I wouldn't use them in a song, but I would use them as the inspiration to write a song.
Yeah.
Because they're such odd words, I probably wouldn't use them for the writing portion of it. Like, I wouldn't use it as a lyric. Yeah, I wouldn't use it as a lyric, but it's a very good idea to like kind of draw that inspiration from. That's why I've used it.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, I look forward to hearing the song about Sonder. I ponder. Awesome. Yeah, cool. Okay, so what's the inspiration behind that single that you've got out that's Toxic?
What's so that was a song that I wrote back in 2018, and it draws a lot on mental health and the idea of being isolated in your own thoughts, and like the key line of the song is, "When I'm alone, I'm toxic," and that really just like when you're alone by yourself, you can really get into your own thoughts and just get into yourself into a dark place that you kind of can't find a way out of. That was kind of what the idea of the song was about, was being in such a heavy and hefty place because you've left yourself alone. Yeah,
like we need other people to be in our space, otherwise we turn into a toxic thing.
Yeah, so being like, yes, alone time's great, but the idea of the song is that being so isolated from everyone is such a toxic thing because you're only hurting yourself more than you're hurting anybody else.
How interesting that you wrote that then, and now we've had that pandemic.
Yeah, I thought...
Right? Like sometimes it's like a prophetic message that you've sent to the world.
Like... I thought, like, because someone asked me when the song actually came out, because I released it last year, like the new version of the song last year. They asked me when it came out, and they were like, "What's this about?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's about being isolated." And they went, "Oh, did you write this during the pandemic?" And I went, "No, I wrote it 2 years before COVID even started." Like, that was like, this song has always been written. It's always been in my backlog, but I've never released it as a standalone song. It was on my first album, but completely different to this, and had a completely different name as well. So it was a mouthful. On my first album, the name of the song was "Loneliness Tastes Like a Cup of Cyanide."
Right. Okay.
And I don't know.
So you've cleaned that up quite a lot into something.
Yeah, I mean, it was "Loneliness Tastes Like a Cup of Cyanide," and then it was in parentheses it had "toxic," and so when I redid the song, I went, no, it should just be called "Toxic."
Yep.
Because the name's way too long. It doesn't need to be that. That doesn't actually really speak much about the song.
Yeah, yeah. I think with songs like I like the idea of that long name as well. Like, it kind of, you can. It's
exciting sometimes too, because like you hear a song name and you're like, "What's that about?"
Yeah.
Like, what, that intrigues me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But it needs to be short so that people can talk about it, because that you want them to share it and you don't want it to be so arduous so they can't say like a business name.
It's like start talking about like Fall Out Boy songs and like, oh, my favorite Fall Out Boy song is like 20 words long, and
yeah. Cool, awesome. So what's on the horizon now? You're working with your band.
Yeah, so we're doing a lot for that. We're trying to get a lot of gigs at the moment. Gearing up to eventual releases of some songs that we've been working on for quite some time. But
so this is in Perth. If people are in
Perth, so
you're going to gig somewhere else as well, or just
well, eventually we've been talking about when we eventually, I don't know when that is, but release an album. We want to do kind of like a regional tour in West Australia. Kind of go down south, do a couple of shows down south, and maybe go up north a little bit as well.
Yeah, awesome.
But last night, we had a Wednesday night gig at Mojo's in Freo.
Oh wow, that's cool.
So we got Josh Sweetman put us on his Sweetman Sounds, and like we were technically the headliners because we were the last band, but then we've got a gig tomorrow night at Leaderville HQ, and then next Friday we've got our actual first headlining show, like where it's hosted by us technically, at the Sonar Room in Freo.
Awesome. Okay, so people can just where do they find you to find out where your gigs are, your social medias?
So definitely jump on Facebook or Instagram. Those are the best places to go. Just look up Viper Chain. At the moment, I think by the time this comes out, we'll probably have a new logo up. But the logo we've currently got up is just white with the name Viper Chain. Just look out for like the cover photo of five guys.
We'll link it below so they can.
Yeah, definitely like check us out on there. We'll have announcements for if we're releasing anything or if we've got shows coming up.
Yep.
Because we've got some big things planned and big things that we want to do.
Awesome. So you're working on heaps of new material.
Yeah, heaps of new material.
And lots of new gigs.
Yep.
Yep. And it's good that gigging is back in Perth.
Yeah, no, it's it's amazing. It's amazing. We went actually. So last night was our first gig in about 3 months. I think it was. Our last gig before that was in Freo as well at Clancy's Fish Pub. So our bassist now is also a bassist in a other metal band, like heavier band in Perth by the name of Dining with Sinners.
Yep.
Like, I wouldn't say we've stolen him because he's still in the band.
Yeah.
And if anyone knows Dining with Sinners, we have not stolen Harry from the band. He is with both bands now.
Yeah.
But so he's been playing with us now. So we played with them at that gig because they asked us to jump on that lineup, and
great.
Yeah,
that's good. Awesome. So like going back to your like inspirations for music and stuff, because you've got like really different feels. So if people check out the Viper Chain, it's a completely different. Like,
it's completely different.
Gave me a Metallica, Silverchair sort of a thing.
Yeah, I was about to say a lot of the earlier stuff, the stuff that's currently out on Triple J on Earth, like the demos, is very Silverchair inspired.
Yep.
Liam has always been massive into Silverchair, and Silverchair was always a massive inspiration for him growing up, as well as Metallica. Obviously, we've all grown up listening to Metallica. But I would say our inspiration's a lot now, going into where we're going now, is bands like in the metalcore scene. So like Beartooth, like early Bring Me the Horizon, sort of new Bring Me the Horizon at the same time. Some other bands like Motionless in White. So like we've always kind of drawn from our older inspirations as well. But like that one is, those are what we're currently working as. For myself, when I was growing up, as well as listening to all that like heavier stuff, I was always into a lot of like alternative, like indie projects as well. One of my favorite bands of all time, which actually 3 of their albums are in my top 5 albums of all time, is Radiohead.
Yep. So
Radiohead have always been a band that I've looked to because the way that they push the boundaries of making music, they never conformed.
Yeah. They made some really like odd songs, long songs.
Yeah, I thought
strange sounds when it wasn't popular to put those sounds in at the time.
That definitely drew me to them because, I mean, the very first song of them I can remember hearing was "Creep," and like that's just a very like post-grungy.
That's an iconic song though.
It's a like post-grungy like 90s rock song, but when you look past that and further into their work, you've got their albums like OK Computer and Kid A, which pushed and defined so many different genres just from those 2 releases. 2 consecutive releases, I thought, that changed music and how a lot of people viewed music was so important to me as a musician.
And do you think, like, as a songwriter, like yourself, like, is that something you are passionate about, like trying to find your something different?
Yeah. So I don't want to stick to one thing. I like to push the boundaries a little bit and pull other ideas from different genres into things. So like the genre that I'm kind of stepping forward into with my solo project is it's known as Midwest emo.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna have to check that out.
so it's sort of a mixture between.
Is it weird that I don't know what that is?
So
yes.
So it's a mixture between like math rock, which is very like they do a lot of intricate like guitar stuff and
geometry while you're doing the guitar.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But
equals MC squared.
But they play a lot around with a lot of time signatures and tempo changes and stuff like that in math rock. But using that mixed with emo, mixed with, I would say, like it's got like almost like a Midwest folky sound sometimes to it. So it kind of mixes all these different levels to it. So that's sort of the direction that I'm going in eventually with my solo project. That and mixing that with pop punk, because a lot of the songs that I've written previously for my solo stuff has been very pop, like heavily pop punk inspired, and kind of branching off of what I'm writing now. Still fits in that same, like I could release it all together and it would make sense, but like
yeah, I think it's hard when you're trying to make an album or an EP or something and you've got all these different ideas and you're like, at the same time people want more of the same and you're trying to build a fan base and you're like, but I need to explore my creativity and do some different ones. And they're like, but hang on a minute, we like the same as what you always gave us.
That's why I find like that's why Radiohead always intrigued me, because they released this very first album. Their very first album was this grungy post-rock sort of album that, you know, was very on brand for the early 90s. Like, you know, with all these other bands like Nirvana and all that stuff that were really massive at the time. And then their next album, they kind of was similar, but like started to take a little bit of a step away. And then OK Computer came out, which was such an odd album to just, for them to release with how different it was to everything else.
Like, and it's kind of, I guess it's a trust that maybe they had the backing of their record companies or whatever as well, but it's like a trust in, okay, well, these fans like us, we're going to serve this other stuff up.
Well, and, I think it really came down to I think it really came down to them just deciding, like I think it was kind of like, oh, okay, we're not actually scared to release this. Like, let's just do it. And I mean, props to them, because it became like one of the biggest albums of all time. And I mean, you could argue the same for a lot of Pink Floyd's releases. All of their stuff like was quite different between things. Like, they always kept that Pink Floyd sound, like Radiohead have always kept their Radiohead sound, but it's always been differences between their projects. Yeah,
it's interesting to think about how, like, what drives that change. You know? Yeah, cool. All right, so that's super duper interesting. And that's great to get those ideas about the book. Because I'm always interested in getting some new ideas. Like you said, with the Radiohead, it's like takes guts to come out with something different and trust and hope. And it's harder, well, maybe in some ways easier for independent artists and at the same time harder because you don't have any money to back you, right? You're backing yourself. But then it's also, you don't have a record company telling you, hey, you've got to produce the same thing again. You've got to do that, right? And if you're starting out, you've got more leeway to experiment.
I think when you're starting out, you've got a lot more freedom to kind of find what you want to do. But I guess some of the cons about it are when you're trying to create that fan base at such a small level. Like, a lot of the people that start following you is because they like a certain thing.
Yes.
Like, a lot of people will start following you because they saw you at a gig and you played a certain style that they really liked. And then if you just, like, out of nowhere change up, they're going to go, oh, I kind of don't like them anymore. Like, that wasn't what I didn't think that they were like this.
Yeah.
So it comes down to just really, like, honing into what you can do, but then also branching off from that, but not too far at the same time.
Yeah.
I would say branch off, but find a happy medium between finding new people, but then keeping the people that are already following you, especially when you're at such a low level, like, happy, because those people that started following you at the start, if you keep them around for a fair chunk of the period. Eventually, if you do decide to change, then they'll be more open to the change rather than just a drastic change.
Yeah, yeah. Or just create a new project.
Oh, yes, that is also...
If it's completely different. I'm going to do opera now.
Yeah.
Or something else. Yeah, okay, cool. And so what do you think like music does for you then? As a person that creates music, you like playing with other people, you like gigging, but like the creation of music, like what does it do for you that nothing else could do?
I think it gives me a sense of freedom, and really is a release, and it gives me a break from all the other things that are going on in life. Like if I'm having a really stressful week at work, I will just hone in and just play guitar, sing songs for hours, because I know that like music is one of those things that will just bring me back down to where I want to be. Like even if it's just listening to music has always just been so important to me that it's been like my grounding point. Like if I feel like I'm going through too much, music is always there.
Yep. It's like your friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And have you always played music? When did you start learning instruments?
I think I was 6 years old when I first got my first guitar. I didn't really take it seriously until I started high school. So about around the age of 13 was when I fully started properly. When I started playing in bands, was when I took it serious and started doing it so much more. And that was when I started to eventually actually get good and stop putting my parents through the torture of having to hear me play, I don't know, Smoke on the Water, terribly, and Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah. Is that the first thing that they teach you?
Smoke on the Water was the very first thing I ever learned.
Yeah.
But I learnt it incorrect because the person that taught it to me in an incorrect key.
Oh no. Snake on the Water.
Yeah, so they taught me, it's like the joke is like 035 on the E string. So 035 on the frets, when it's actually supposed to be 3-5 3-5-7.
Right.
On, I think it's the G string.
Okay.
Or the D string. I think it's both actually.
So they taught you like an easy way.
Yeah, they taught me the easy way.
Like almost like, I can't believe this is not Smoke on the Water.
Yeah, that and Seven Nation Army was another early one that I learned, and like teaching my younger brothers, because one of my youngest brothers wants to learn guitar, and he's hasn't got the attention span for it yet, but like I didn't at the time when I first started learning.
How old is he?
He's 10 this year.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's definitely different between male and female of how young you can learn. Like I learned violin when I was 4.
Yeah.
And my sister learned violin when she was 4, and then my brothers wanted to learn drums. And my mum said, "You can have drums for your 4th instrument." And she was like, "And we have a violin here. You can start with that."
Yeah.
And lucky that they were both actually they're actually better at violin than me and my sister. Like one of my brothers is really good. And but he used to muck about in his lesson all the time. He used to just hop around on one foot.
Yeah.
But then one day he just was like, boom, and he was like amazing at it.
Yeah, so I would say for so long I kind of gave my guitar teacher nothing in return. Like he was trying to teach me so much, and I would learn and I would get better, like, you know, as I'm going.
Hopefully he's watching this now and he thinks, "Oh, I've got something." Is he getting something back now when he sees you playing your band?
Yeah, no, I did. I remember inviting him to a couple of my high school performances, cool. And like it was really awesome to have him there, especially when I started like really playing my own songs and writing those things and playing those live. And he's seen it. He's seen a couple of them, and I do also remember when I first recorded my very first album, which is still not like. A lot of people ask me, "Oh, is it available anymore?" I don't have it anywhere because it was such a raw, rough recording. Like it was done at home. The vocals were terrible. They were distorted to all hell because I didn't know of anything about recording. But it's still my very first album.
Hey, you made an album. That's pretty good. Like most people just would be like, "I don't know what
that was in my second last. I was in year 11 of high
Wow,
school.
you know what? That's pretty good. I mean, even if it wasn't a very good album, it's still you still made an album. Right?
Yeah, so
That's
it was an album called Mended Wings and Broken Thoughts, and it was
Yeah.
a bunch of just like all the songs were focused upon like mental health and
Yeah.
a lot of just like those ideas of mental health, which is I think is a lot of what I write about with my own music.
Mm.
But there's a couple of songs that don't have my two favorite songs that I've ever written don't actually have much meaning to me. But they have ideas behind them that I think are kind of cool. So I've got a song that I wrote which was called Personal Amphetamine, which will eventually be released as my own single for my solo project as a pop punk song, which is kind of got a bit of a double entendre. Like you can kind of look at it either way. It kind of talks about being obsessed with something or like being in this toxic relationship. So I've always told people you can either look at it as substance abuse, like being in a toxic relationship with alcohol or drugs, or being in a toxic relationship with someone that you just can't get away from.
Yeah.
So it was always, and like my favorite line in the song was in the chorus, and it was, "You fill my brain with dopamine, the only worth it amphetamine."
Yeah.
Was, and I wrote this back in high school, and like this had no like I just wrote it because it sounded cool, and like the meaning started to form itself as I was writing, and I was like, this is kind of what it kind of could be, but it's all up for own like everyone's personal interpretation of the song. And then I've got another song which is kind of an anti-love song. It's called Another Typical Love Song.
Anti-love songs that are.
It's kind of it takes pity on all other like cheesy love songs.
Okay. Yeah.
So, it's
love sucks. Wedding singer.
pretty much. It's also a very bouncy pop punk song.
Okay.
Now it was a very soft song when I first wrote it, but nowadays it's a lot like more upbeat.
Okay. So when are you planning to put these awesome songs out?
I'm in the process of recording them. Trying to do them at home at the moment, balancing that between obviously playing with Viper Chain and doing stuff with them and work at the same time.
Just paying for my bills and living my life and
all the things that actually come from trying to, live and be able to stay in a house. But yeah, no.
Mate, you need a full-time or 2 full-time jobs just to pay your rent and birth now.
Pretty much. Pretty much. But yeah, no, it's eventually going to be out. I hope to have them out this year.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well,
I actually hope to have 4 songs out this year under my solo project. The next 4 singles kind of lined up for my eventual album is Personal Amphetamine's next, then Another Typical Love Song, a song called Crazy, and then a song called Bless You.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so.
Sounds good. Yeah, great. I'm making a Spotify playlist to go with the show. So everyone who's been on the show, I'm putting songs on the playlist.
Oh, awesome.
And I'll just keep updating it as things change.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
Something different.
Yeah.
Get people to get on Spotify and
definitely.
give me stuff a spin. Cool. All right. It's been so great to talk to you.
Awesome. No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, very inspiring. Hopefully people listening have been inspired and encouraged to get and do the band that they've always wanted to do.
Yes,
yeah.
That's definitely something I'd always tell people to do, is just like I'm only just 20. Like I've got so much time ahead of me in music and so many things, and I've done so much already. Like it feels like, because I've recorded all this time and I've been in so many gigs and battle of the bands and things like that. Even though you might be like in your 20s, your 30s, it's never too late to just go for it.
Yeah.
I feel like just you're never too old, you're never too young. Just start that band, start playing music. Like do what you've always wanted to do. It's always
that's great. Yeah, I think music can transcend all that.
Yeah.
And there's music for different times of your life. There's music for different genres, and you don't have to think, I'm too young for it, or I'm too old for it, or some of the most fulfilling some of the people I've played in bands with have have started something new much later in life.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel like you'll eventually start to change your style. Music transcends age, transcends gender, transcends genre, all these things. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a certain age, gender, play a certain way, play a certain thing to be able to do it. It's what you make it. Music is from the soul, from the heart, like your own thoughts, your feelings. As long as you're playing, like for me, as long as you're playing with passion and you actually are playing because you want to play, then there's nothing stopping you.
Cool. All right, well, thanks so much for your time, Dylan.
Thank
it's been
you.
Great to talk to you. And if you're still watching, you're still here on YouTube, thank you for listening. And make sure you subscribe to the show. And we'll see you again on another episode soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have far to come?
I'm based